With update 1.7.1, Hunt Showdown introduced a mechanic that would allow the player to swap their weapons, tools, and consumables between slots by selecting the item they wanted to move in their hotbar and holding the key of the item they wanted to swap positions with. This mechanic had an unintended consequence. After the update, switching from primary weapon to secondary weapon, not swapping them, just switching from one to the other, occurred when the player released their finger from the button, as opposed to when the player pressed the button. This created noticeable inconsistent delay with switching from weapon to weapon. However, I have finally figured out a way to get around this. So right now I've changed nothing, and this is exactly how the game should feel like for you. If I want to switch my weapon, it's very difficult to switch back and forth quickly because it occurs when I release my finger from my button. So I have to just tap it really fast to get a quick switch. However, once I change these to keys that I don't use, when I go here to my macro setting, all I have to do is create a macro for the number 1, which presses the colon button on my keyboard, and create a macro for the number 2, which presses the quotation mark button on my keyboard. Now, there has to be a little bit of delay here, because if there's 0 delay, it will act weird in the game. But basically now, if I come back here, I can switch as fast as I want, and it just feels infinitely better. Like, it's just instant. When I press the button, it just switches immediately. Whereas before, if I held down for too long, it would, start swapping my weapon over, and I don't really want that. But it just feels great now. So, say you're a player that uses a single button to switch between your primary and secondary weapons. Luckily, there's a way to do that as well. Okay. So say my button is Q. Well, what I want to do is actually put a button that I'm not going to use. So I put a bracket. And then my macro, and I make a macro for the bracket button being pressed and released very quickly. Then for a keybind, I just add Q. And come back into the game. I can switch so much faster, and it happens not when I release the button, but when I press the button. I don't know if you can hear it. So much better. Hope this helps.